I'm Steve Flanery at the South Dakota Hall of Fame, and today my guest is Gary Conradi, a 2011 inductee into the South Dakota Hall of Fame from Sioux Falls, South Dakota. Hi, Gary.
Good morning.
Gary's had a really interesting and illustrious career in South Dakota. He spent his whole life serving the people of South Dakota in one way or another, and we're going to have a little conversation today about his life and the Hall of Fame. So welcome, Gary.
Thank you.
And why don't you just, as I look through your biography and through your history, you and I have a lot of things in common. You went to Boise State. Yes. I went to Boise State.
Right.
You graduated from Sioux Falls, Washington.
Yes.
And then, as I recall, you went and enrolled in the University of South Dakota.
That's correct.
And what really caught my attention is Gary and I are both political science majors, and he was one of Farber's boys. And if you know anything about the University of South Dakota, W.O. Farber was a wonderful political science chair at the USD, and he had a lot of illustrious students: Tom Brokaw, Larry Pressler,
Yes.
Gary Conradi. So why don't you talk a little bit about about your career and your life story, and tell.
All right, we'll do that. But first I'll mention, you mentioned Doc Farber, and something that he said to us and to me has kind of guided me, through my career. And that was to imagine the possibilities. And that's kind of in the back of my mind all this time.
He was a great lecturer. I took state and local government from him, and he was wonderful. And go ahead.
Well, I'm very fortunate that I have two sets of great-grandparents who homesteaded in Aurora County, South Dakota. And so that kind of has given me my footprint into South Dakota, and why I'm so interested in the state and have a strong love for the state. When I graduated from the University of South Dakota, it was the time there was a draft going on, and I thought I would try to make the best of this. So I enlisted in the Army, into the Army Intelligence Corps. After basic training, out to Fort Holabird in Baltimore, Maryland, for the intelligence school, and it was a great experience, a great education there. And I think the things that I learned there also has given me a good background for the projects that I have initiated and gone on.
And then, how long were you in the military?
I was in for 3 years.
3 years.
I came out and I became the executive director of the South Dakota Mental Health Association, which was in Pierre. And I held that job for 2 years, and then I decided to make a change, and I joined this little company in Sioux Falls, Raven Industries. And I was their first personnel manager for the company. And I rose through the ranks, and when I retired in 2001, I was the chief administrative officer of the corporation.
And as you and I have both discussed, your mentor at Raven was David Christensen.
Yes, very much so.
And he was a real fine corporate leader and community citizen in Sioux Falls.
That is correct. And Dave instilled in me a feeling of giving back to the community and to the state, and becoming involved in numerous civic organizations, which I did. The vice chair of the Chamber of Commerce. I became the chairman of the South Dakota Manufacturers and Processors Association, which then became the South Dakota Chamber after a while. And so I was very active in United Way activities, other types of civic organizations that I did.
I saw that you were Sioux Vocational School for the Handicapped,
Yes, I
which was
on
a
the board
tremendous
of the
organization
I was on the board
when
of
I
the
was
Sioux
there in
Vocational School. Yes.
late 70s.
Yes. Well, when I retired in 2001, I would consider a successful career, but then I began my second career, and I used what Doc Farber had told me and some of the lessons from Dave Christensen as well, and my love for the state and history of the state. And so I wanted to go out and help preserve a lot of the institutions that were important in our state's history. I started out with photographing all the courthouses in South Dakota.
Did you see the recent South Dakota magazine?
Yes.
Not
Yes.
the latest issue.
Yes.
But
Yes.
a great story on the courthouses.
Yes, one of my little photos is in that article.
Oh, it is?
Yes.
Okay.
And I collaborated with Art Rush, who wrote a book on the county courthouses. And he used 10 or 12 of my photos in his book.
Well, Gary, one of my, as a machinery salesman, I've been in every courthouse in South Dakota, and they're absolutely beautiful. And
They are.
You've really done a heck of a job
Well,
of
they're
preserving that historical record.
They're,
Yeah.
they're prairie palaces, really.
And they were the centers of commerce and business
Center of
for
commerce,
every
and
county.
business, and
Government.
and government. Yes, no question about it. Well, then I decided I belonged to the Episcopal Church, and I decided to photograph all of the Episcopal churches and missions in South Dakota.
Well, I'm Episcopalian as well, and I understand that there, at one time, where there were in excess of 150 churches and missions.
Now, at one time, I think there were 97.
97,
When I went
okay.
out on
Wow.
my search, and I found them all, and I presented my collection to the bishop of the diocese, and
Which bishop?
it was Robertson, Bishop Robertson.
Creighton Robinson.
Creighton
Yes,
Robertson.
yes, yeah.
And Creighton said, I have something for you. And I said, well, what is that? He said, well, you've done something I was not able to do. You've been to all of these locations, and I have this for you. And he put a star quilt over my
Wow.
shoulders,
That's a heck
which
of an honor.
was quite an honor.
A very big honor.
Yes, it was.
One of the things I wanted to talk about with you is you had a quote that I thought was just, it really kind of summed it up, and I'd like to work on that. You said, have confidence in yourself, remain flexible, and use your imagination to counter those setbacks. Don't just accept setbacks.
Well,
Talk about some of the challenging
okay.
things that took place.
all right. Well, one of my projects was to photograph the graves and the memorials of the South Dakota Medal of Honor recipients, of which there are 13. They're not all buried in South Dakota. They're buried in other locations as well, out in Arlington Cemetery. I was there at Nampa, Idaho, Pensacola, Florida.
Wow.
So I made those journeys to record those. And back in South Dakota, I stopped at South Dakota State, where they had two military Medal of Honor recipients who had graduated from there. And they had a very nice memorial park located outside the ROTC building. Well, at the University of South Dakota, of which I'm a graduate, there were 3 Medal of Honor recipients. Joe Foss, a fellow named Arlo Olson from Toronto, South Dakota, and George Bud Day from North Sioux City. We had nothing on campus, no recognition of any of those individuals. So I went to see the president, and I said, what can we do to correct this? And he just said, Gary, all it takes is money.
That was Jim Abbott, I imagine.
That was Jim
Yeah.
Abbott. He was not very encouraging. And the foundation office was not too encouraging either. They had other reasons they wanted to raise money, and this wasn't one of them. Well, I ran into Ted Munster, who's been a friend of
I knew
mine.
Ted, yep.
And Ted is a retired USD Foundation president. He thought something should be done as well. So between Ted and I, we created a committee, and we worked for about 3.5, 4 years from the very beginning to where we finally came to fruition, and we call it the Patriots Plaza, and it was dedicated on Veterans Day 2 years ago on campus.
Where is it located on campus?
It's located outside, it's on the campus between the law school and the business school and the Newhart building.
Yes.
So it's
Okay.
right there, prominent place. Current president of the university, very supportive of the project and was very helpful and helped to open some doors. We had a lot of doors to open when you do a project like this that goes through
On state property.
yeah, different levels of government and approvals and so forth. So it was finally completed, and the Patriots Plaza honors all veterans, but special emphasis on the 3 Medal of Honor recipients that were connected to USU.
That is a great story.
Yeah.
Well, let me ask you this, Gary. What would you're really a positive person. What would you say, or what would you say to encourage young people to follow their dreams and pursue their dreams?
Well, I think what I would say is that don't just accept getting by. Challenge yourself. Create some challenges that might be difficult, but they're realistic that you can accomplish. And make that commitment to see it through.
In your career, were you always goal-oriented?
Yes, very much
You'd
so.
set the goal and
Yes.
then try to achieve it and
Right.
then move to the next level.
That's correct.
And keep moving.
An example of that is on my way out here yesterday when I drove out, the town of Plankington has called a railroad museum. Well, I am now photographing all of the vintage railroad depots in South Dakota. And I'm up to 90 of them.
Huron just tore theirs down.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well,
Did you get that one before they
well,
tore it down?
Well, I went to Plankington, and
Okay.
I saw the museum, and it railroad museum, and it didn't look like it was a depot. So I stopped in the city government office, and I asked, was that the depot? I said, oh, yes, that was the depot. It was also a hotel, and people stayed there. But go down to the newspaper office, and they'll give you all the particulars. So I go down to the newspaper office. No, that was not a depot. It was torn down years ago, and it sat right across the street from that building. That was not a depot. Well, the lady at the newspaper was interested in what I was doing with the depots, and she mentioned a few others that she knew of, and I said, yes, I have already found those. And she said, well, I think I have a lead. I might have an idea for where the White Lake depot might be.
Wow.
And I had been to White Lake a year ago and talked to everybody in town that I could find, and nobody knew whatever happened to their depot. Well, she said, I think it's on a farm about 6 miles outside of White Lake. It's being used as a chicken coop. Here's the phone number of the people who own that property.
Only in small town South Dakota.
Right. So I'm hoping on my return to Sioux Falls on Sunday, I'll be able to stop and photograph that one.
That is a great story. And you know the history of the Aberdeen Depot during World War II, where the ladies,
Yes,
the farmers shot pheasants and
Yes,
brought them in, and they
yes.
made pheasant sandwiches.
Yeah. And Aberdeen depots are very substantial.
Yes.
They're very nice.
The hub city,
structures.
of course.
Yes.
Yeah. I lived there for a couple of years.
At one time, they had 13 different depots.
Wow.
There. Now I think it's 5.
So you've always been a history buff, haven't you?
I have. Yes.
Yeah, and I got a political science and history
Right.
degree, and
Right.
so
Well,
I
had
love
a
to
strong
hear
minor
these
in
stories.
history too.
Okay.
Yeah.
I just love to hear these stories because that's who we are.
That's who we
and,
are.
And somebody's got to document it.
That's
yeah.
right.
Well, this has been a wonderful conversation. And is there anything else you'd like to say?
A highlight, another highlight I had
Okay.
when I was doing the Episcopal churches. I had been at one at Red Table, in a very remote location, and I had brought a lunch with me, and I was sitting there looking at the beautiful view of the Badlands in the distance. I turned around and I saw colored cloth on the horizon.
Prayer cloth.
Yeah, and I figured, well, this has something to do with Native Americans. So I followed the path up to the top of a hill and looked down. and there was an encampment of quite a number of people, and a big circle. And in the middle of the circle was a pole, and there was a man attached to the pole. And I thought, this is the Sundance. And do I dare go down there? Well, I did. I drove down, and right away 2 fellows came up to me and said, this is a private event. You're trespassing. You're going to have to leave. Why are you here anyway? So I told them that what my mission was with photographing all the churches. And he said, well, you're on a mission, and so are we. You're welcome to stay. If your camera comes out of the car, it belongs to us.
Okay.
So I was able to watch the whole Sundance.
Well, Gary, that is remarkable. I have some friends from Italy that come here every other year and do the Sundance.
Oh,
And
really?
Generally speaking, non-native people are not invited, as
That-
you
that-
know, as you found out. To
I did find
That is a
out.
remarkable honor they afforded you.
Yes, it was.
And it's a remarkable ceremony. I've
Yeah.
never seen it, but I've seen the
Yeah,
results of it.
It's
you
very
know.
remarkable. Yeah.
Well, that's a great story. Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome.
Well, I really enjoyed having you here today, and it's a real honor to meet a Hall of Fame member like yourself.
Well.
And this has been a great
All right.
couple days. And
Thank you
thanks
so
for
much.
being with us today,
All right.
Gary.
Thank
All right,
you.
Appreciate it.
Right. Okay.